London, 1815. Miss Katherine Caldwell shivered as she peered through the drizzling rain at the elegant townhouse before her. Light spilled from every window, illuminating the steady stream of fashionable carriages depositing London's elite onto the covered portico. The soft strains of a chamber orchestra floated on the night air. "It appears we have arrived," declared her aunt, Mrs. Agatha Pennington, with the air of someone announcing a great achievement. "Though I dare say we are unfashionably punctual." Katherine adjusted her faded evening gloves, attempting to hide a small tear near the wrist. "Perhaps we should wait a quarter hour before entering?" I would not wish to appear overeager. In truth, she wished they might wait until the ball concluded altogether. Or better yet, that she might flee back to their modest lodgings in Cheapside where she belonged. But Aunt Agatha would not hear of it. Not when they had secured, through means Katherine dared not inquire about, an invitation to Lady Harrington's grand spring ball, the most coveted social event of the season. "Nonsense," Aunt Agatha replied, tugging at her niece's pearl-adorned coiffure. "We shall enter immediately. Remember, girl, you have precisely 3 months to secure a husband of means before your cousin Dorothea's wedding. Your uncle cannot support us indefinitely." Katherine sighed. "Yes, aunt." It had been 6 months since her father's passing had left them in dire financial circumstances, forcing them to abandon their comfortable country home and take residence with Aunt Agatha in London. 6 months of pinching pennies, of retrimming old bonnets, of turning threadbare gowns, and of Aunt Agatha's relentless matrimonial campaign. As their shabby hired hackney pulled forward, Katherine caught sight of her reflection in the carriage window. Her ivory silk gown, her mother's, altered to suit current fashions, was elegant enough, and the modest pearls at her throat had been deemed acceptable. But her slippers? She tucked her feet beneath her skirts, though the action was futile. The worn satin dancing shoes, mended multiple times, would be visible the moment she stepped down. "Remember, Katherine," Aunt Agatha whispered as they joined the queue of guests awaiting introduction, "you must dance every set offered. And smile, for heaven's sake. No gentleman wants a gloomy wife." Katherine forced her lips upward, though her heart remained firmly anchored in her slippers. She had been a passable dancer in the country assemblies of her youth, but the sophisticated ballrooms of London were another matter entirely. Still, she squared her shoulders as they approached the receiving line. "Mrs. Agatha Pennington and Miss Katherine Caldwell," announced the butler. Lady Harrington, a formidable matron whose approval could make or destroy a young lady's prospects, assessed Katherine with calculating eyes. "Miss Caldwell, I understand you are new to town." Katherine cursed deeply. "Yes, my lady. It is most kind of you to include us in your illustrious gathering." Something in her sincere tone must have pleased the hostess, for Lady Harrington's features softened fractionally. "Your late father was well respected in diplomatic circles. I trust you will enjoy yourself this evening." They moved forward into the crowded ballroom, Aunt Agatha immediately scanning for eligible bachelors. Katherine, meanwhile, found her attention drawn to a commotion near the refreshment table. A cluster of gentlemen surrounded a tall figure whose golden hair gleamed under the chandelier's light. His perfectly tailored blue coat emphasized broad shoulders, and his laughing countenance suggested a man utterly at ease in his surroundings. Even from across the room, Katherine could feel the force of his charisma. "Who is that gentleman?" she asked a nearby young lady. The girl, barely out of the schoolroom, judging by her girlish pink gown, gasped. "You do not know? That is His Royal Highness, Prince Nicholas Barrington. Queen Charlotte's nephew," she added importantly. "He has just returned from diplomatic service in Vienna." Katherine's eyes widened. "A royal prince, here!" She had heard rumors that members of the royal family occasionally attended Lady Harrington's events, but had dismissed them as exaggeration. "He is exceedingly handsome," the girl continued, "but terribly particular. They say he once refused to dance with the Duke of Wellington's niece because her gown was last season's design." Katherine felt her cheeks warm. If outdated fashion was cause for rejection, her ancient slippers would surely provoke royal disdain. "Come, Katherine," Aunt Agatha materialized at her elbow, steering her toward a balding gentleman with a protruding stomach. Sir Reginald has expressed interest in securing your hand for the first set. The evening progressed much as Katherine had anticipated, a succession of mediocre dances with gentlemen whose interest in her piqued upon learning of her connection to the diplomatic corps and waned upon discovering her lack of dowry. She declined refreshment, fearing that standing still would draw attention to her footwear. It was during a brief respite, while Aunt Agatha conversed with a former acquaintance, that disaster struck. "I say, Barrington," came a drawling voice from behind a potted palm, "have you observed the curious creature in the ivory silk? The one with hair the colour of chestnuts." Katherine froze, mortification flooding her veins. They were speaking of her. "Miss Caldwell," responded a rich baritone that seemed to resonate through her very bones. "I have noted her, though we have not been introduced. Her dancing is enthusiastic." A snicker followed. "Indeed. But have you seen her slippers? Positively ancient. I wager they belong to her grandmother." "Perhaps her great-grandmother," agreed Prince Nicholas. "Though one must admire the economy. In these difficult times following the war, even the formerly respectable must economize." Katherine's cheeks burned as laughter erupted from the concealed gentleman. She should flee, return to Aunt Agatha, pretend she had heard nothing, but her feet remained rooted to the marble floor. "Still," continued the prince, his voice thoughtful, "there is something refreshing about a young lady who dances for enjoyment rather than display. The Tun's débutantes perform like automatons, all identical steps and vacant smiles." "Careful, your highness," teased his companion. "One might suspect you of harboring romantic notions." "Hardly," Prince Nicholas replied dismissively. "I merely observe that genuine enthusiasm is rare in these circles. Now, shall we rejoin the festivities? Lady Harrington has promised to introduce me to the Austrian ambassador's daughter, and diplomatic relations must be maintained." The gentlemen moved away, unaware of the witness to their conversation. Katherine released a shaky breath, uncertain whether to feel humiliated by the mockery of her well-worn slippers or intrigued by the prince's unexpected observation. She had no time to contemplate the matter, for the orchestra struck up the opening notes of a waltz, the scandalous dance recently imported from Vienna, now cautiously permitted in select ballrooms under the watchful eyes of patronesses. "Miss Caldwell." She turned to find Sir Reginald, her first dancing partner, extending his hand. "Would you do me the honor?" Katherine hesitated. The waltz required closeness that bordered on impropriety. Accepting might label her fast. Declining might condemn her as provincial. "I fear Miss Caldwell has already promised this dance to me." The voice, the same rich baritone she had overheard moments ago, belonged to Prince Nicholas Barrington, who had materialized beside them with the silent grace of a cat. Up close, his features were even more striking, intelligent blue eyes beneath straight brows, a strong jaw softened by the hint of a smile at the corners of his mouth. Sir Reginald bowed immediately. "Your Highness." "I was unaware, a simple misunderstanding," the prince replied smoothly. "You will excuse us." Before Katherine could gather her wits to protest, the prince had led her toward the center of the ballroom, where couples were forming for the waltz. Whispers followed their progress. "Your Highness," she managed as he turned to face her, "I believe there has been a mistake. We have not been introduced, and I certainly never promised you a dance." One golden eyebrow arched. "Are you refusing me, Miss Caldwell?" She faltered, caught between propriety and practicality. A public rejection would create a scene, acceptance would fuel gossip. "No, but excellent." His hand settled at her waist as the music began in earnest. "I shall overlook the lapse in formalities, considering the circumstances." Katherine's bewilderment must have shown on her face, for he added in a lower voice, "I observed your discomfort. Sir Reginald's attentions are notoriously persistent and rarely honorable." As they began to move with the music, Katherine's initial tension dissolved. Whatever his reasons for this unexpected rescue, the prince proved an exceptional dance partner. He guided her through the unfamiliar steps with gentle pressure, his lead confident without being domineering. "You dance well, Miss Caldwell," he observed after a moment. "With genuine joy, rather than calculation." It is refreshing. The echo of his earlier overheard comment was unmistakable. Katherine felt a flicker of mischief, rare since her father's death. How fortunate that my ancient slippers have not impeded my performance, Your Highness. His step faltered momentarily, and a flush crept up his neck. You overheard? I did. Then I must apologize for my companion's rudeness. His gaze held hers steadily. Though not for my observation regarding your dancing. Katherine should have been mortified, should have mumbled an acceptance of his apology and remained silent for the duration of the dance. Instead, she found herself responding with unexpected honesty. These slippers belong to my mother. They have carried me through many happy evenings. She executed a perfect turn beneath his arm. I would rather dance well in worn shoes than poorly in new ones. Something shifted in Prince Nicholas's expression, surprise, followed by genuine interest. A practical philosophy, Miss Caldwell. One might almost call it wise. Or one might call it the rationalization of a young lady with limited means, she countered, surprising herself with her boldness. He laughed, the sound warm and unaffected. Indeed. Though in my experience, necessity often breeds the most authentic wisdom. His gaze grew thoughtful. You are recently arrived in London. 6 months ago, following my father's death. The admission slipped out before she could consider its propriety. We, that is, my aunt and I, have found town quite different from country life. Your father was in the diplomatic service, I understand. Katherine nodded, wondering at his knowledge. Ambassador to Prussia before the war. He was recalled to London when his health began to fail. The music swelled around them, and for several measures, they danced in silence. Katherine became aware of the stares directed their way, curious, envious, speculative. The prince, however, seemed entirely focused on her. Miss Caldwell, he said as the waltz neared its conclusion, would you permit me to call upon you tomorrow? There is a matter regarding your father's service I should like to discuss. The request was so unexpected that Katherine nearly missed a step. Yes, of course, Your Highness. Though I cannot imagine what matter would require, until tomorrow, then. He bowed formally as the music ended. 2 o'clock, if that is convenient. Before Katherine could respond, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd of admirers that had hovered at the edge of the dance floor. She made her way to where Aunt Agatha waited, eyes wide with disbelief. Katherine Caldwell, her aunt hissed, seizing her arm, what have you done to attract royal attention? I believe I danced, aunt. Katherine's lips curved upward. Like an angel, perhaps. Prince Nicholas Barrington stood before the modest Cheapside townhouse, questioning his own judgment. The diplomatic matter he had mentioned to Miss Caldwell was genuine. Her father had left papers that might prove valuable to current negotiations with Prussia, but his interest was not purely professional. There had been something in her direct gaze, her unaffected manner, that had captured his attention. A quality lacking in the polished débutantes presented to him season after season. The door opened to reveal a flustered maid who curtsied so deeply she nearly toppled. Your Royal Highness! The mistress said, that is, please come in. He followed her into a small but well-appointed sitting room where Mrs. Pennington awaited, practically vibrating with nervous excitement. Miss Caldwell, by contrast, appeared composed, rising to curtsy with simple grace. She wore a morning dress of pale blue muslin, modest but becoming. Your Highness, Mrs. Pennington gushed, what an unprecedented honor. Our humble home is quite transformed by your illustrious presence. Nicholas inclined his head. You are most kind, madam. I trust one find you well. Exceedingly well, now that you have called, the older woman simpered. May I offer refreshment? Tea? Wine? We have a very acceptable Madeira, though nothing approaching the quality your Highness must be accustomed to. Tea would be most welcome, Nicholas interrupted gently, then turned to Miss Caldwell. I hope I find you recovered from last evening's exertions. A hint of mischief sparked in her eyes. Entirely, Your Highness. My ancient slippers and I weathered the evening admirably. Mrs. Pennington gasped at her niece's impertinence, but Nicholas found himself suppressing a smile. "Katherine!" "Such familiarity is refreshing," Nicholas finished. "Miss Caldwell and I have established an understanding, Mrs. Pennington. She knows I value forthright conversation." The maid returned with tea, and for several minutes, the conversation remained safely conventional. Nicholas observed Miss Caldwell as she poured, noting her graceful movements and the intelligence in her expressions. Unlike many young ladies who simpered or affected vapid enthusiasm in royal company, she remained authentically herself. When Mrs. Pennington inevitably excused herself to retrieve a special cake from the kitchen, a transparent attempt to leave them alone while remaining within propriety, Nicholas seized the opportunity. "Miss Caldwell, I mentioned a matter concerning your father." She set down her teacup. "Yes, though I confess I am puzzled. My father's papers were mostly personal. His diplomatic correspondence would have been delivered to the Foreign Office." "Not all, it seems." Nicholas leaned forward. "Before his death, your father entrusted a particular document to his solicitor, with instructions it should be delivered to the Crown only under specific circumstances." Catherine's brow furrowed. "What circumstances?" "The resumption of certain negotiations with Prussia, which are now underway following Napoleon's defeat." He studied her reaction carefully. "The solicitor contacted the Foreign Office last week, but the document itself was not with your father's legal papers." "And you believe I might know its whereabouts?" She shook her head. "I'm afraid father never spoke of such matters with me." Nicholas had expected this response, yet felt disappointed nonetheless. Perhaps he left some indication among his personal effects? A journal, perhaps, or there was his cipher box. Catherine's eyes widened slightly at the memory. A small wooden case with intricate marquetry. Father always kept it locked. After his death, we found the key had been removed from his watch chain. And the box itself. It should be among our belongings in storage. Most of our household furnishings were placed in a warehouse when we left our home. A shadow crossed her features. Though I fear they may have been sold by now to settle debts. Nicholas leaned forward. "Miss Caldwell, might I impose upon you to accompany me to this warehouse? The document may be vital to current diplomatic efforts." Katherine hesitated, clearly weighing propriety against duty. "It would be most irregular." "Aunt Agatha would never permit." "We shall bring your aunt, of course," Nicholas assured her. "And my equerry. All proprieties will be observed." The calculating look that crossed her face reminded him that she was, after all, a diplomat's daughter. "On one condition, Your Highness." "Yes?" "You must explain why you requested the waltz last night." "The truth, if you please." Nicholas found himself momentarily nonplussed. Ladies did not typically question his motives, certainly not so directly. "I told you." Sir Reginald's intentions were a convenient excuse, she finished, her gaze steady. "But not your primary motivation." He considered deflecting again, then reconsidered. If he wanted her trust, perhaps honesty was required. "Very well. I overheard your conversation with the young lady regarding my supposed rejection of Wellington's niece. And I wish to demonstrate that I am not the shallow tyrant society paints me to be." He smiled ruefully. "Though my comments regarding your slippers hardly supported that aim." Katherine studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I appreciate your honesty, Your Highness. I shall accompany you to the warehouse tomorrow, weather permitting." The return of Mrs. Pennington with a suspiciously perfect cake prevented further private conversation, but Nicholas departed feeling oddly satisfied. Miss Caldwell was unlike any young lady of his acquaintance, forthright, intelligent, and refreshingly genuine. As he stepped into his waiting carriage, he found himself anticipating the morrow with unexpected eagerness. The warehouse on London's outskirts was a cavernous building packed with the accumulated possessions of families in financial distress. Katherine felt a pang as she and the prince were led through narrow passages between stacked furniture, paintings, and crated household goods. "Your father's belongings are in the northwest corner, miss," explained Mr. Finch, the warehouse manager, who had been rendered nearly speechless by the royal visitor. "Not much remains, I'm afraid. The larger pieces were sold at auction last month, as instructed by your solicitor." Katherine nodded, conscious of the prince's presence behind her. Aunt Agatha had remained in the carriage, overcome by a convenient megrim that Katherine suspected was actually terror at the prospect of navigating the dusty warehouse in her second-best gown. "Here we are." Mr. Finch gestured to a small collection of trunks and crates. "I'll leave you to your search, shall I? Call if you require assistance." When they were alone among the forgotten treasures of her former life, Katherine turned to Prince Nicholas. "I should warn your Highness that I have no certainty the cipher box remains. Many items were sold before we placed the remainder in storage." He removed his gloves, a surprisingly practical gesture. "Then we shall search thoroughly, Miss Caldwell." For the next hour, they worked side by side, examining trunks of linens, books, and household items. Katherine found herself repeatedly distracted by the incongruity of a royal prince kneeling on the dusty floor, sleeves rolled up, examining her family's possessions with genuine interest. "Your father appears to have been quite the scholar," he observed, leafing carefully through a volume of Greek poetry. "These annotations are most insightful." Katherine smiled, touched by his appreciation. He believed in education for its own sake, not merely as a social accomplishment. "He taught me Latin, Greek, and German himself, much to my mother's dismay. She did not approve of female education. She feared it would make me unmarriageable." Katherine laughed softly at the memory. "She insisted I balance intellectual pursuits with proper feminine accomplishments. A husband wants a companion, not a professor, she would say." Nicholas set the book aside. "Your mother sounds like a sensible woman." "She was." Katherine's fingers traced the embroidered edge of a table linen. "Though I believe she would be disappointed by my current prospects. 21, without fortune or connections, and still unmarried. Perhaps your prospects are improving." Something in his tone made her glance up sharply, but his expression revealed nothing as he turned his attention to a small crate of personal effects. "Ah! Could this be what we seek?" He held up a rectangular wooden box, approximately 8 inches long, with intricate inlaid patterns on its surface. Katherine moved closer. "Yes. Father's cipher box." She took it reverently, running her fingers over the familiar marquetry. "But it remains locked, and without the key," and Nicholas reached into his waistcoat pocket. "Perhaps this might help." On his palm lay a small brass key. Katherine stared at it, then at him. "You had the key all along?" "But how?" "Your father entrusted it to my uncle, the king, shortly before his death." Nicholas's expression grew serious. He believed the contents too sensitive to risk falling into the wrong hands during the uncertainty of war. "And you did not mention this yesterday because—" "I needed to confirm you were indeed Ambassador Caldwell's daughter, not merely someone claiming the connection." He offered an apologetic smile. "Diplomatic caution, Miss Caldwell. I meant no deception." Katherine accepted the key with mixed emotions. "I understand the necessity, though I confess it stings to realize you questioned my identity." "Not your identity," he corrected gently, "merely your trustworthiness. A distinction I now realize was unnecessary. You are very much your father's daughter." The compliment warmed her despite her lingering irritation. She inserted the key into the lock and turned it with a satisfying click. Inside the box lay several items, a small leather-bound notebook, a sealed letter addressed to His Majesty George III, and beneath these, a folded document bearing diplomatic seals. "The Prussian trade agreement," Nicholas murmured, carefully lifting the document. "With the secret annexes that were never published." He looked at Katherine with genuine respect. "Your father has done his country a great service, Miss Caldwell. These terms will be invaluable in the current negotiations." Katherine felt a surge of pride. He always said that true diplomacy happens away from public view. A wise observation. Nicholas carefully returned the document to the box. "This must be delivered to the Foreign Office immediately." "Of course." As they prepared to leave, Catherine's gaze fell on a small trunk she had not yet examined. "One moment, if you please." Inside lay her mother's belongings, a tortoiseshell comb, several embroidered handkerchiefs, a prayer book, and beneath these, wrapped in tissue, a pair of white satin slippers, pristine and unworn. Her wedding slippers, Katherine whispered. She saved them all these years. Nicholas watched as she lifted them reverently. A treasured memory. Yes. Katherine smiled wistfully. She would have wanted me to have them. As they made their way back through the warehouse, Katherine was acutely aware of the prince's presence beside her, not merely as a royal personage, but as a man who had shown unexpected depths of character. His willingness to search through dusty trunks, his genuine interest in her father's books, his respect for her intelligence, all suggested someone far removed from the superficial aristocrat society expected. "Miss Caldwell," he said as they approached the exit, "I hope you will allow me to express my gratitude for your assistance. Perhaps you and your aunt would do me the honor of attending the diplomatic reception at Carlton House next week? As my personal guests." The invitation, a social coup that would set Aunt Agatha's matchmaking heart aflutter, should have delighted Katherine. Instead, she felt a curious melancholy. After today, their association would likely end. The prince had obtained what he sought, diplomatic necessity would no longer require their acquaintance. "You are very kind, Your Highness," she replied, striving for composure. "We would be honored to attend." He seemed about to say more when they emerged into daylight to find Aunt Agatha fluttering anxiously beside the royal carriage. "Katherine!" "Your Highness! I was beginning to fear you had been crushed beneath falling furniture." "We are quite intact, Mrs. Pennington," Nicholas assured her, his formal manner returning like a mask. "And successful in our mission." As they journeyed back to London, Katherine cradled her mother's slippers in her lap and wondered why the triumph of retrieving her father's important documents felt overshadowed by the certainty that her brief connection with Prince Nicholas Barrington was drawing to its inevitable close. The diplomatic reception at Carlton House exceeded every expectation. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble floors, exotic flowers scented the air, and the assembled guests represented the pinnacle of European society. Katherine, adorned in her ivory silk gown, newly trimmed with Brussels lace, a gift from Aunt Agatha following Prince Nicholas's substantial donation to their household in gratitude for diplomatic assistance, felt both overwhelmed and oddly at peace. On her feet, her mother's wedding slippers gleamed, pristine and perfect. "Remember, Katherine," Aunt Agatha whispered as they were announced, "the prince's invitation means nothing beyond social courtesy. Do not embarrass yourself by presuming further interest." Katherine nodded, though the admonition was unnecessary. She harbored no illusions regarding Prince Nicholas's intentions. Their brief association had been a diplomatic necessity, nothing more. The fact that she had spent the intervening week recalling every nuance of their conversations, every shared glance, was merely feminine foolishness. They had not progressed far into the crowded reception room when a distinguished gentleman approached. "Miss Caldwell?" "Lord Marshfield, Foreign Secretary." He bowed over her hand. "His Highness informed me of your assistance in retrieving your father's papers. The Crown is most grateful." Katherine curtsied. "I am pleased they proved useful, my lord." "More than useful," he assured her. "Vital to our current negotiations." He glanced meaningfully toward a group of stern-looking gentlemen in continental dress. "The Prussian delegation arrived yesterday, and already your father's insights have proven invaluable." As Lord Marshfield moved away, Katherine found herself the object of curious glances. Whispers followed. "Ambassador Caldwell's daughter assisted the prince, diplomatic mission." "It appears you have become notable, Katherine," Aunt Agatha observed, visibly preening at their newfound prominence. "Perhaps this evening will yield more than social connections after all." Katherine was spared responding by the sudden hush that fell over the assembly. Prince Nicholas had entered, resplendent in formal court dress. The orders of the Garter and Bath gleamed against dark blue velvet, and his golden hair caught the candlelight like a corona. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting ambassadors, ministers, and nobles with appropriate deference or condescension. Katherine watched, entranced despite herself, as he navigated the complex social hierarchy with the skill of a master diplomat. When he finally approached them, Aunt Agatha sank into a curtsy so deep Katherine feared she might not rise again. "Your Royal Highness," she gushed, "we are overcome by your generosity in including us in such an illustrious gathering." Nicholas inclined his head. "Mrs. Pennington. Miss Caldwell." His gaze lingered on Katherine. "I trust you are enjoying the evening." "It is magnificent," Katherine replied honestly. "Yet perhaps overwhelming for those unaccustomed to court functions." His smile held genuine warmth. "Might I suggest a brief respite?" "The conservatory is particularly tranquil, and the night-blooming cereus is expected to flower this evening, a rare spectacle." Before Aunt Agatha could protest, the prince had offered Katherine his arm. "With your aunt's permission, of course." What could Aunt Agatha do but nod her approval? The speculation that would follow such marked attention might damage Katherine's reputation or elevate her prospects beyond imagination. The royal conservatory proved to be a glass-enclosed paradise, filled with exotic plants from every corner of the empire. Gas lamps illuminated winding paths between palm trees, orchids, and flowering vines. A small fountain played in the center, its gentle music creating an oasis of calm amid the evening's formality. "It's beautiful," Katherine breathed, genuinely moved by the unexpected sanctuary. Nicholas guided her toward a secluded corner where a large plant with waxy leaves supported a single, elaborate white blossom. "The night-blooming cereus. It flowers for a single night each year." Katherine studied the exquisite bloom, its petals unfurling slowly in the warm, humid air. How extraordinary! All that preparation for such a brief moment of glory. "Some would call it tragically fleeting," Nicholas observed. "Others might see it as a reminder to appreciate beauty while it exists, rather than mourning its inevitable passing." Their eyes met, and Katherine felt a current of understanding pass between them. "A philosophical perspective, Your Highness." "Nicholas," he corrected quietly. "When we are not observed by 100 curious eyes, I should prefer you use my name." The intimacy of the request sent a tremor through her composure. "That would be most improper. As was searching through dusty trunks together, yet we survived the scandal." His smile held a hint of mischief. "I find that many rules of propriety serve primarily to prevent genuine connection." Katherine ran her fingertips along the smooth edge of a palm leaf. "Genuine connection requires more than shared experience, Your Nicholas. It requires equality of circumstance, mutual understanding, compatible temperaments. And you believe these lacking between us?" His voice had softened, his gaze intent. "I believe they are irrelevant," she replied carefully. "Our association was born of diplomatic necessity and will conclude when that necessity ends." "As it should." Nicholas stepped closer, near enough that she could detect the faint scent of sandalwood that clung to his clothing. "Is that what you truly believe, Katherine? That our acquaintance has been merely transactional?" The use of her given name sent a shiver of awareness through her body. "What else could it be? You are a prince of the realm. I am a penniless ambassador's daughter with worn-out slippers." "Yet tonight your slippers are new," he observed, glancing down at the pristine white satin visible beneath her hem. "A symbolic transformation." "My mother's wedding slippers," she explained. "From the warehouse." "I thought," she hesitated. "I thought they deserved one perfect evening before returning to storage." Something shifted in Nicholas's expression, a softening, a decision reached. "Katherine Caldwell, you are the most refreshingly honest, genuinely intelligent woman I have encountered in years of diplomatic service. Your father's papers were indeed valuable, but it was your character that proved truly remarkable." She stared at him, uncertain how to respond to such unexpected praise. "When I first saw you dancing," he continued, "I observed a young woman moving with joy rather than calculation. When I overheard comments about your worn shoes, I recognized the superficiality of such judgments. And when you challenged me directly, demanding honesty rather than accepting flattery, I realized how rarely I encounter authentic interaction." "Nicholas," she began, but he raised a hand. "Please, allow me to finish." I have spent my life surrounded by people who see my title rather than myself. Who agree rather than challenge, who flatter rather than speak truth. His gaze held hers steadily. Until you, with your practical philosophy about dancing well in worn shoes. Katherine felt her cheeks warm. You give me too much credit. I merely spoke without proper consideration for rank. You spoke as one person to another, he corrected. And in doing so, you allowed me to be Nicholas rather than His Royal Highness. That is a gift beyond measure. Before she could respond, a rustle of fabric announced the approach of other guests. Nicholas stepped back, resuming his royal demeanor with practiced ease, though his eyes still held a warmth meant only for her. The Sirius is magnificent, is it not? He remarked in a louder voice as a group of ladies rounded the corner. Miss Caldwell expressed particular interest in botanical specimens. Katherine gathered her composure, understanding the necessity of the performance. Indeed, Your Highness. The conservatory is most educational. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, conversations, and surreptitious glances exchanged across crowded rooms. Katherine found herself presented to ambassadors and ministers who treated her with marked respect, clearly aware of her role in retrieving her father's papers. It was past midnight when Aunt Agatha, nearly overcome with social triumph, declared they must depart. Such an extraordinary evening, she gushed as their borrowed carriage rolled homeward. Lord Marshfield himself complimented your deportment. And the Turkish ambassador requested an introduction. Katherine, I begin to believe we may yet secure your future. Katherine murmured appropriate responses, though her thoughts remained in the conservatory with Nicholas and the night-blooming Sirius, beautiful, ephemeral, and utterly unforgettable. ****. 3 days later, Katherine was arranging flowers in their small parlour when the maid announced a visitor. His Royal Highness, Prince Nicholas Barrington, the girl declared, eyes wide with continued disbelief at their elevated social connections. Katherine froze, a spray of violets suspended in her hand. Aunt Agatha, who had been dozing by the fire, leapt to her feet with remarkable agility for a woman of her years. Your Highness! What an unexpected honor! Nicholas entered with casual grace, as though royal visits to modest Cheapside townhouses were commonplace. Mrs. Pennington. Miss Caldwell. I trust one find you well. Exceedingly so, Aunt Agatha assured him, frantically smoothing her skirts. Though had we known to expect such an illustrious visitor, we would have prepared more fitting refreshment. I require no refreshment, madam, Nicholas replied, his gaze fixed on Katherine. I have come on a matter of some importance concerning Miss Caldwell. Katherine carefully set down the flowers. Concerning me, Your Highness. Indeed. He glanced meaningfully at Aunt Agatha. Perhaps we might speak privately, with your aunt as chaperone, of course. Aunt Agatha nearly combusted with excitement as she ushered them into the small back parlour, positioning herself at the furthest appropriate distance, close enough to observe propriety, far enough to provide a semblance of privacy. When they were seated, Nicholas leaned forward, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. Miss Caldwell, Katherine, I find myself in an unusual position. How so? She asked, her heart inexplicably racing. I have consulted with my uncle, the king, regarding a matter of personal importance. His fingers tapped a nervous rhythm on his knee. Specifically, the matter of my marriage. Katherine felt the blood drain from her face. He had come to share news of his betrothal. Of course. The diplomatic reception had been successful, alliances would be formalized through marriage. That was how the world of international relations functioned. I wish you joy, she managed, her voice remarkably steady. The lady is fortunate indeed. Nicholas blinked, then laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. You misunderstand, Katherine. I have not come to announce an engagement, but to propose one. She stared at him, certain she had misheard. I beg your pardon. I wish to marry you, he said simply. If you are willing. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. From her position by the window, Aunt Agatha made a strangled noise. But, that's impossible, Katherine protested. You are a prince. I am nobody. You are Ambassador Caldwell's daughter, Nicholas corrected. A gentleman's daughter of impeccable lineage, if modest fortune. More importantly, you are the woman I wish to spend my life with. We barely know each other. We know what matters. He took her hand, his touch warm and steady. We know that we value honesty over flattery, substance over appearance, genuine connection over social advantage. Katherine withdrew her hand, trying to think clearly despite the tumult of emotions. The Queen would never approve such a match. The court would consider it a misalliance. My uncle has given his blessing, Nicholas countered. As for the court, they will follow the Crown's lead. There will be talk, of course, but it will fade. And if it doesn't, she challenged. If I am forever seen as the penniless girl who somehow trapped a prince? Could you bear such whispers following your wife? Following your children? Nicholas's expression softened. Katherine Caldwell, do you truly believe I would allow anyone to disparage the woman I love? The woman who dances with joy rather than calculation, who speaks truth rather than flattery, who values worn shoes with happy memories over new ones without history. Love. He had said love. Katherine felt her carefully constructed defenses beginning to crumble. I have no royal training, no understanding of court protocols. Those can be learned. He moved to kneel before her, heedless of Aunt Agatha's audible gasp. What cannot be taught is character. Intelligence. Genuine warmth. These you possess in abundance. Katherine looked into his earnest blue eyes and saw not a prince, but a man offering his heart with all the vulnerability that entailed. You truly wish to marry me? Not for diplomatic advantage or royal alliance, but for myself alone. For yourself alone, he confirmed. Though I cannot deny your diplomatic heritage is an added benefit. Our children will have their mother's wisdom and their father's position, a formidable combination. Our children. The words conjured images of golden-haired boys with her brown eyes, of girls with her dark curls and his regal bearing. A family born of love rather than alliance. Yes, she whispered, her heart finally overruling her practical mind. Yes, I will marry you, Nicholas Barrington. His smile was radiant as he rose, drawing her to her feet. You have made me the happiest of men. Aunt Agatha, overcome by emotion, dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief. Oh, my dear girl. A royal wedding. Your Uncle Pennington will be absolutely speechless. Katherine laughed, giddy with joy. I believe that would be a first. Nicholas raised her hand to his lips. There is one more matter to discuss. Yes? From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. A tradition, I believe, among both commoners and royalty. Inside lay a ring of breathtaking simplicity and elegance, a perfect sapphire surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. It belonged to my grandmother, Nicholas explained as he slipped it onto her finger. Like your mother's slippers, it carries the weight of happy memories. Katherine admired the ring, then looked up with mischief sparkling in her eyes. I suppose I shall need new dancing slippers for our wedding ball. The ones I wore to Lady Harrington's would never do for a royal occasion. Nicholas laughed and pulled her close, propriety momentarily forgotten. My love, you may dance in whatever shoes you please, so long as you dance with me. And in that moment, Katherine Caldwell, soon to be Her Royal Highness Princess Katherine, knew that sometimes the most worn paths lead to the most unexpected destinations. And sometimes a prince's mockery of worn shoes can lead to the most perfect of love stories.